So today we're going to have two iconic ships of two different empires competing against one another. One will be the Imperial class Star Destroyer, and the other will be a Galaxy class starship from the Federation. We'll start off with the Federation Galaxy class starship. It has 10 to 14 Type 10 phasers. It has two photonic tube launchers. It has shields and hull armor. Now we're going to go over some information about the Galaxy class starship. It also carries shuttles, and it'll have a minimum of 4 up to 6 normally, but could have possibly more. Now, the other thing we need to start taking a look is at their weapon systems. And so we're going to focus on the torpedoes for right now, and they have a power scale of 173,000. We can see it has a volley rate of 8, which gives it an attack value of 1,384,000. And that's what we've seen it do. Now, the manual states it can do 10, and so we're going to factor that into our ratio. But I just want to tell you what we've seen on screen. We've also seen phaser type 10, which is also known as a phaser type X, do 65,000 terawatts of damage, and our point scale, we're just going to call it 65,000. And we've seen them have a volley speed of 14, and then we do 910,000 points of damage. Okay? And so now we have an understanding about what the torpedoes can do, and we have an understanding of what the phasers can do. And so now we're going to look at its defensive capabilities. Okay, so now we're going to look at its defensive capabilities. Now we're going to be analyzing the Galaxy class Starship Enterprise, which we've seen in the movies and the show, and we've seen the shields to be able to take 1,755,000 terawatts of damage. And we've seen the armor or the hull of the ship is 1,040,000. And so that gives us a shield and armor ratio of 2,730,000. And then the ship's mass is 4,500,000. Okay, and so and on our scale, it will give it an armor scale of 4. Okay, and and I'm trying to remember how we do. I think it's you divide the mass by the armor, or do you divide the mass by the hull, I think is what it was, and then it creates our armor ratio. But I honestly can't remember. But anyways, it's in my data table. But it's a 4, and just to let everyone know, the Imperial class Star Destroyer is using the same level strength of armor based on some statistical data seen, but it was analyzed through the movies and stuff. So their technology level as far as armor goes is identical. Okay. So next we're going to take a look at the Imperial class Star Destroyer. Okay. So first off, it tells you it has 60 heavy turbo lasers and 60 heavy ion cannons. That is not completely correct. It's actually 52 heavy turbo lasers and 8 turbo laser turrets. Most guidebooks are factoring the turrets and the heavy turbo lasers as one. And it is not accurate, and it will make the Imperial class Star Destroyer much weaker than what it really is. And so we are not going to accept that. We're going to look at what it actually has, because the turbo laser turrets are the large turrets on the side of the ship, and they're dual turrets. So there's 2 heavy turbo laser turrets actually on there. And so we're going to factor that into our data as well. Now it also has 72 fighters, 29 shuttles, it has shields and a ray shield. Now you're probably wondering, why does it say shields and ray shield? It's because they have 2 separate shields that exist in the Star Wars universe. One stops energy, one stops physical objects. It's kind of like the navigational deflector on the Enterprise. It also has armor, right? So now let's look at the data table. So the Imperial class Star Destroyer, it has it has a ray shield minimum of 200,000, based on what the Clone Wars says, but it's actually stronger than that, and we'll talk about that in a minute. But its its shields are going to come down to 1,215,360, and it has a hull value of 12,480,000. So it has a shield and armor value of 13,695,360, and its mass is 54 million. So it is drastically larger than the Enterprise, and we're going to have to factor that into it as well. Like I stated before, it has an armor level of 4. And so now what we need to do is we need to take a look at the weapons on the Star Wars vessel and compare them. So the turbo lasers, the heavy turbo lasers are going to do 6,700 terawatts of damage, and they have a volley speed of 12, which is 80,400. And then we have turbo laser turrets, which are what I was talking about. They are 30,000 terawatts of damage, and they have a volley speed of 8, which brings it at 240,000. Okay. Now we also have the heavy ion cannons. We don't have exact data on them, but so I'm going to throw them like the turbo laser as far as what damage they're doing to the shields, and it's 6,700, and they will have the same volley speed of 12, which is additionally, 8,400. Okay, so there's some things that we want to look at here with this, and that is there's some factors about turbo lasers which are going to be off from my previous videos to now. Based on the Clone Wars and Rebels, the Imperial class Star Destroyer is shooting much slower, and those ships shoot much slower. In the movies, though, the newer movies, the Imperial class Star Destroyer is doing a much higher volume, and that's what we have here, and that's what the 12 and 8's coming from. So we're going to use what the movies have over Clone Wars. So how might things work? Movies and the episodes, live action, take precedence over cartoons. Okay, so just want to throw that out there. Okay, so as I talked earlier about the two different shield systems, there is SPD and then there's RU. So I have some formulas that convert, and I'll just tell you, I don't have them written down here, but it's one SPD equals 126 terawatts, and one RU equals 180 terawatts. Okay, so I go down, and some of the manuals had talked about Imperial class Star Destroyers, and they have 6,400 SPDs, which comes out to 806,400 terawatts, and then the ray shield um, is 2,272 RUs, and then when we use our conversion, it's 408,960, and so that is where we are getting our Star Destroyer shields. Okay, so I know any of you guys who are paying attention, and you pay attention to the facts and everything. It's stated that a Venator class will go down after uh, 100,000 megatons, and it said the Imperial class Star Destroyer is twice that. And that's stated in Clone Wars, and there's manuals and other things that say that. But we're not going off that just because what we see on the show or in the movie where an asteroid hits the top of the ship and it, kind of like blows it up and stuff. But it's still functionable based on that damage and what had happened and what it was able to take. The whole value is much, 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 much stronger than what that is saying. And so that ratio is that 12,480,000. So there you go. So that's what we know. So we're going to look at the two combined together now. Okay. So when we look at them, we compare them head to head. We can see that the Enterprise outguns the Imperial class Star Destroyer just because its weaponry is so much more advanced. But the shields, it's got better shields, but when you look at the armor, I mean, it just blows it out of the water, right? I mean, it's so much bigger, so much bigger. So you can see where there's a huge difference between obviously the ratio and size. Now here, let's look at that right now. So as you can see, the Galaxy class or Federation starships are just tiny compared to Imperial class Star Destroyers. Okay, so there we go. So now in the next, we're going to talk about the scenario we're going to have, because obviously anyone knows anything, we know Imperial class Star Destroyers' ability to fire at a distance is really, 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 really short. So a Galaxy class starship could just stand out of its range and just blow it to pieces. So there's no competition with the two. If it came to a fight, the Galaxy class would obliterate the Imperial class Star Destroyer, no problem whatsoever. But what if it's a first contact situation and they're close and they're in firing range of the Imperial class Star Destroyer and it goes for the kill? What would happen then? That's what we're going to look at. Okay, so the Imperial class Star Destroyer hails the Enterprise. The Enterprise comes to its first contact situation. We know it's a military vessel. Its weapon systems are armed. It's red alert. This is what happens. It gets into range, and this is the firepower potential for the first volley. So remember, the Enterprise can do 8 to 10 torpedoes, and then it can do around 10 to 14 shots with its Type X phasers. But we're gonna go with 10. Okay, what we typically see it do. And remember, the phasers are 65,000. So the barrage of 10 is going to be 1,730,000. Okay, the other thing to remember, the Imperial class Star Destroyer, every single turbo laser has its own power source. So keep that in mind when you're watching this. Okay, so the first 2.3 seconds of the engagement, okay, the Imperial class Star Destroyer is going to release a full barrage. It's forward facing, so it's going to have at least 12 shots are going to get off, causing 80,400 points of damage. Those two forward facing turbo lasers are in range are going to deliver 480,000 terawatts of damage. It's going to be 16 shots. Okay, so it's a total of 560,400, right? It's going to hit the Enterprise. It's going to bring the Enterprise shields down to 1,194,600. Okay? Now the Enterprise is going to return fire with a full barrage of 10 torpedoes. Those torpedoes are going to blow away the shields, okay? Because they're moving so fast, the energy shield and the ray shield will both be catching these things, and it will beat them all the way down, and you're going to get um, 514,640 points of damage to the hull of the Imperial class Star Destroyer, okay? So the next 4.27 or 4.27 seconds into the fight, the Imperial class Star Destroyer's weapons are not going to stop shooting. They're going to continue to shoot. It's going to hit the Enterprise again with another barrage. It's going to bring its shields down to 634,200, and then the Imperial class Star Destroyer's hull value is going to be 11,965,360 at this point. Okay, so then about 7.8 seconds into it, the Enterprise is getting hit with the barrage again. But by this time, It's been enough time for the Enterprise to be able to do a comeback with weapons. It's going to do a phaser load of 10 shots, and those 10 shots are going to hit the hull of the Imperial class Star Destroyer. Okay, so at 7.8, it's getting hit again. Now it's going to go ahead and it's time to return fire. So now it's returning fire, and that's about 11.8 seconds into the battle. So now the shields of the Enterprise are going down. Okay, they're down and we're taking in structural damage. But the phasers are hitting the Imperial class Star Destroyer, and with its pinpoint accuracy, it is going to blow away all the heavy turbo laser turrets, and that's going to bring the ship down to its 2.36 seconds. It's going to have 12 turbo lasers going off at that time. So it's still firing on the Enterprise. The shields of the Enterprise will collapse at this point, and the hull will be around 1 million 33,400. Now, during this engagement, the tractor beams that were holding the Enterprise are going to go down because of the structural damage that's been done. The Enterprise would have aimed and damaged those. The hull of the Imperial class Star Destroyer at this point is 10,235,360. Okay, and so at this point, they have lost most of their ability to fight. The Enterprise is no longer stuck there with the tractor beams. It's going to be able to pull itself away. It's at impulse. It's going to be too fast for the Imperial class Star Destroyer to really do anything about it. It will get out of range. It'll then reload its torpedoes and its phasers, and it will continue to fire on the Imperial class Star Destroyer, and it will destroy it. Now, this is pretty much the best scenario an Imperial class Star Destroyer is going to get when taking on a Federation starship like the Galaxy class. And the reason for that is its shield or its tractor beams would hold that ship. It's designed and strong enough to do it, and it has so many weapons, but the fact that the Enterprise has pinpoint accuracy and the Imperial class Star Destroyer do not is a big factor in why the Galaxy class could take on Imperial class Star Destroyer head on. Okay? Now, if it stood there and continued to fight, I think the Imperial class Star Destroyer probably would destroy the Enterprise because it's just the Enterprise would be taking so much damage in those seconds, and even though it's getting shits off, it's just so big it would die. Now the other scenario is, and this is thing that I didn't put in here, but we're going to talk about is this other factor is what would the ion cannons do? Are the ion cannons just going to hit the shields and do nothing like most energy weapons, or is it going to be like what we've seen with the Ferengi and the Bree, where it's going to knock out the shields? If that is the scenario and the ion cannons actually affect the shields of the Galaxy class starship and bring them down like they've done in Star Wars and we've seen with the Bree, the Enterprise will be destroyed almost instantaneously. It will just get obliterated. So that is basically what would happen if the Imperial class Star Destroyer took on a Galaxy class starship. Now, they don't typically use their ion cannons. They're on there, but they usually, if they want to destroy something, they're using their turbolasers. And so that's why this fight is based on what would typically be done. Okay, so the Imperial class Star Destroyer, I think it's 2 out of 10 chance of winning. So if the ion cannons do something, it'll win. If the Enterprise just stood there and tried to take it on head on in range, it would lose, which I don't think it would do. So that's why the Enterprise or the Galaxy class starship would win 8 out of 10 times. It's just, it doesn't even have to get in range. It could just sit there and blow it up. The only thing that Imperial class starship could do is it would have to uh, do a micro jump, grab it with its tractor beams, and then the same scenario would happen. So, but the Enterprise would just be able to win that scenario anyways. So, yeah. So that's my opinion. The Imperial class Star Destroyer. I've seen other videos about it, but they didn't really go into the actual like data. They just kind of like talk about what they think. So I wanted to do something a little bit different where I actually was factoring in data and counterpoints and using some equations and stuff. So I hope you guys enjoyed it. This video was much longer than I was expecting. I was hoping to get it in like 8 minutes, but not even close. But yeah, I hope you enjoy it. This is a Trek Wars. Oh, by the way, please subscribe, and if you like my content, make a comment and subscribe. I really want to know what you guys think. Do you think I'm right? Did I make some errors? If you found some errors, let me know. I would appreciate it because I enjoy talking about Star Trek and Star Wars.